Welcome everybody. Today, we're going to cover two areas. One following up from last week. We're talking a lot about how people or the public, the three emotions they're sharing when it comes to their thoughts about real estate right now, whether it be buying or selling, is fear, uncertainty, and anxiety. So we're saying, okay, they're probably most likely not going to move from that spectrum all the way over to the other in one instance. So we need to start taking steps with them. And one of the best prospecting steps right now is one, respecting the fact that people are busy, and two, looking at how can we use post-COVID Zoom presentations or something that is 15 to 20 minutes of one's time to understand something, to provide certainty, to provide them options. So then that way fear is not potentially there. And a lot of that really is in our ability to have conversations with people, whether they're in our sphere, past clients, just in general public, to leads that come in that we're prospecting, we're following up on, to just, if they're not ready to buy at this moment, to not leave them in the kind of world of fear, uncertainty, or anxiety, is to book that 15 to 20 minute strategy session, buyer's presentation, however you want to call the consultation, that walks them through more of the truth in why the market's doing what it's doing, how that would impact them and their situation, whether they're renter, sell, who needs to buy, downsizer, investor, but at the end of the day, what can they then do to better prepare based off whatever their time frame is? And the goal from all of those kind of quick 15, 20 minute, sessions with people is to move them then into whether it be your search tools that you have, so that way they're in communication with you, whether it be if they're a homeowner, the automation that you have for, their home values, so you can follow up with them on price and their plans, but really any next step, it would relate to really their situation and their time frame. And Sean is going to walk you guys through what he was talking about last week, which is just, here's some of the slides I have, and here's some of my talking points as Sean uses this for his sphere. He also works with Zillow leads, so that way he's not having to meet people constantly face to face that don't want to, or to respect his time, he moves them to this Zoom session, which is the next step after he talked to them to really guide them on this process. So Sean, I will turn it over to you, and then we'll dive into what Jason Pantena is talking about that we should be doing with stories on Instagram, but excited to be with you guys today.
All right, so I'm going to go super fast. This is just an overview of everything that I do. This does take me about 45 minutes normally, but we're going to do the fast forward. So first thing I do is I talk to them what the difference between being a customer and a client means, and how this form has to be presented, at our first meeting per the state of New Hampshire. This is where I kind of set some future expectations. I basically say I have the heart of a teacher, so I consider myself a teacher before a salesperson. And then I also share how my process is. So basically I say, when you want information on property, I send you the information on property, but I don't learn everything about the property. I'm just an extra set of eyes when I go to see the property. If you like that property, then of course I'm going to go back and review the docs for you, but I send out hundreds of docs every day. I can't possibly read them all, but you should read them because you might want to cancel the appointment or have questions after you read them. This is just sort of where we start here and we finish here. This is basically a summary of the whole presentation. I just talk about how I have a website, and that if you use that, I can see what you're looking at. And that's helpful to me to see what you favorite and all that. And then we talk about what you're looking for. Then I go into the different types of mortgages that there are and why sellers are accepting cash, and then conventional, and then maybe FHA and BA. So I just try to go through and share stories as to why sellers do what they do, even though there are purposes for each of those types of loans. But in this market, they tend to overlook certain ones. This slide is basically to show you how, if today you were approved for 300,000 at a 3.5 rate, your payment would be this, and you wanted to have that payment. Well, now if you want to have that same payment, you got to go up here, and now your price that you qualify for is lower. So I kind of just show the correlation between interest rates and purchase power. This one I'd like to share because a lot of people don't expect all these little fees, and basically I'm sharing all these fees associated with buying a property that can add up and that you need to be prepared, so there's no surprises. The whole purpose of this presentation is to make sure there's no surprises. Then I just share with the differences between a warranty deed and the quitclaim deed and why we always ask for a warranty deed. I talk about septics because in our area, we probably have more private septics than we do public sewer and public water. And so people that come from like Massachusetts, they don't understand how septics work, and so it scares them a little bit. Then I just go through what's working, the process. So like first thing you want to do is get pre-approved. Next thing you want to do is shop below your budget. Then the next thing you want to do is put your offer in first, so don't wait for everyone else to put offers in, be the first to put an offer in. Again, through all of these slides, I'm basically sharing stories where I had success doing these things and why you did that. And then I always call the listing agent. I learned the seller's goals and timelines and all that. Present your best offer first. In our market, they don't always come back and ask for highest and best. So sometimes I'll call the agent and ask them what their process is. And that way I can know what kind of offer I need to write. I talk about the appraisal gap, and that one's probably the toughest one for people to understand. Then I talk about minimal contingencies and how I have all my buyers have gotten home inspections, even though everybody in the world saying and all their friends are saying they had to waive everything. All of my buyers have gotten home inspections. And then I've created this one sort of like out of frustration. It's a buyer self-assessment. So basically what I say to them is that if you have all of these things, then you're a rock star, but you don't need all of these things to get an offer accepted. So I set expectations like, are you willing to offer up to 10% more? Do you have 3 to 3.5% for closing costs? That's just the buy alone. And do you have the 3 to 20% down for a down payment? And then can you absorb any of the home inspection? This is the clause that I use that allows me to get home inspection. So basically, if this number is high, I use a high number if somebody is looking to waive a home inspection, but they really want one. So it just says if the results of the home inspection reveal repair, removal, or remediation costs that are $20,000 or less, the buyer will waive their rights under paragraph 14 and said results shall be deemed satisfactory to the buyer. If the results of the home inspection of those things are $20,000 or more, we go back to paragraph 14, which basically says we can negotiate or ask. And I tell them we can ask, but they may not do anything. So then I share how appraisal gap works. And then sort of the icing on the cake, if you want to guarantee the seller some extra money, pay for their closing costs. So this self-assessment alone basically sets all expectations for a buyer to know, for them to personally feel where they're at in this process today. I did add this slide, and I'm adding another one for my lender. So basically I have my home inspector here. He's going to cut it down. Right now it's 2 minutes. I want it to be 30 to 45 seconds, just him introducing himself, what he does. And then I have my preferred, the 3 of them down below. I have a same slide that I'm going to create for my lenders. This is where I talk about how we get paid. And I just started doing this where I'm doing a buyer agency. I'm accepting the 2% that's typically offered in the market, but I'm doing a $395 non-refundable retainer fee. And I did do my first presentation with that. The only question he had was, when the buyer agency expires, do I have to pay it again? And I said, absolutely not. And so he's like, oh, that's cool. So I'm going to start collecting a $400, sort of cover my expenses fee, just because we're working so hard with buyers and sellers. But when I meet with sellers and buyers, I just say, this is typically what the total commission is. This is what the agent needs to market the home. And then this is what the seller gets to decide what they offer to a buyer. And typically it's around 2%. Then I actually walk them through what a buyer's agency looks like. And I explain disclosed dual, things like that. I share that I work on a team and that there may be times where other members show properties. Then I show them the purchase and sales. I explain what the effective date is and why it's important. And I go through all of the places that are ways that we do to protect their deposit. And so again, people don't usually see this contract until they're writing one. And to me, it's super intimidating, I know when I wrote one for my buyers the first time, super intimidating. So I figured they're going to be intimidated as well. So I just go through all of the important sections of the purchase and sales. Then I just go over like no big purchases. So if you're one of those buyers where it's super tight, you definitely don't want to go buy a car the day before closing, things like that. And then I just share a little bit about myself. Funny thing here is somewhere in here or somewhere I wrote that I believe in Bigfoot, and I literally had a buyer read that and say, "Oh my gosh, it was so cool to see that you believed in Bigfoot. We do too." I was dying. Anyway, so testimonials. And I share, you can Google my name with realtor next to it and you'll see all my testimonials. They're all 5-star. I also put in my hours and I say, of course, I'm available after 7 if we're negotiating a contract, but I put these hours in place because after 7, I might be a little slower to return messages and texts. But, so in fairness to you, this is how I work. And so some people take this to like a whole new level and they don't contact you at all. And I usually share, it's okay to contact me. Just know if I don't get right back to you, it's because it's after 7, and that's it.
I like closing with the music, Sean.
Yeah.
So anybody questions that you just want to ask Sean, as he walked through, like you said, his is 45 minutes, but you can see he has a lot more content that is professional, meaning the contract and, other, situations. Remember, Zillow leads are bottom of funnel. Most of them are most likely thinking, I've been on Zillow for 4 months. I've looked at 77 different homes. I clicked on the button. They connected with me, with you. And so I'm really thinking about buying in the next 4 months. So reality is, yeah, I probably do want to learn these things. So I'm moving from research to transact. So you don't necessarily have to have all the stuff Sean had, but the most important part Tom's sharing is, do you have a process for any person and or lead source to say, you know what, Tammy, you got 15 to 20 minutes to spare, right? Yeah. And having options, if you're thinking about buying or selling a home over the next year, it'd be a good thing, right? Yeah. Well, let's jump on Zoom for 15 to 20 minutes so I can walk you through a little bit of why the market's doing what it's doing, how it looks for somebody like you, and what people are doing to make sure they're ready when the time comes. Sound good? Yeah. And now you're jumping on kind of however you want to phrase that, but something that then walks people through the process and allows you to tell stories. So then that way we can move them from fear, uncertainty, and anxiousness to actually connecting with a professional. That's the biggest part of all this, is that we can get them face to face with a real estate agent, not that you have to buy or sell, but can we time out for 15 minutes and really talk to you about Mark? I think about our coaching calls and how much you and I talk to each other about, man, the history, the businesses, the arms, all these things that unfortunately the people don't get the real truth behind it. It's funny because I was just reading this morning that in the prior housing crisis, 13% of all the mortgages were ARMs. Now, the interesting part was none of the ARMs were at their point of reevaluation. Right now, the number's like 2.8%, but 50% of all the ARMs have already hit their expiration and have been restructured, meaning that there's really like 1%. So until we get 10 times how much we have right now, we're still relatively in a much different place back then. But guess what email I got today? The subject line was like, ARMs are being used just like in 2008. And I was like, well, I got to read that. But then when I read the context, I was like, Well, that number is really like 1.2% compared to 10%. Now it's a sign, right? That look, guys, we got to watch this over time, but it's definitely not a doomsday email as of the way it was presented today. So I'll turn it over to the group. Just ask questions for Sean, or anything that you just kind of have that maybe would help. But Sean, thank you so much for going through the main points of that.
Hey, I'm Positive D. Great job, man. I go over something similar. I do like can you hear me?
Yeah.
I do like 90% of my consults on Zoom. And the main thing I was wondering is like, how in the world do you get that down to even 45 minutes? Because I just go through like slides that have a ton of information, and I don't even go over everything at a super high level. And it's still like nothing per hour.
Yeah. Well, I shoot for 45 minutes, but it is hard. It is super hard because I do tell them I talk fast, but if you have questions, interrupt and slow me down. But yeah, it definitely, 45 minutes, it's real. And sometimes it takes longer, just depending on their questions. But everybody that I do that with sees a difference. Like they basically are like, wow, nobody ever did that for me before. And even my home inspector, I was at a home inspection the other day and I said, okay, guys, it was over. I said, okay, guys, this is where I go dark. And basically the lender's taken over here, blah, blah. And he's standing there listening. And I said, what's up? And he said, oh, I've never heard a realtor have this conversation. They usually just take off right after the home inspection. And he's like, this is really cool. And so like reiterated to my buyers that I'm not the same as everybody else, which I think they already knew, from just that slide presentation. But no, it's a lot of work to get through it. But and mostly what I found and my purposes is that I get to tell success stories and they connect with me. And it's almost, I feel like it's as good as in person. Because if I get a Zillow person, I got to get in front of them for them to meet me. And once they've met me, I know that it's a win,
Yeah. That's really good for the 6 to 12 month out, top of funnel, middle of funnel leads, just to, Mark, I think about like your Zerpal leads and other, just, hey, I'm in this conversation and they're not ready to transact. So the problem is usually when they think meet face to face with us, that means some type of, we're going to try to sell you something, you know what I mean? Or there's some type of commitment. And sometimes it's really out of respect, meaning they really don't want to waste our time because to them, they're thinking I'm very far out. So it doesn't make sense for me to really waste your time as a person of value meeting with me. So I don't think that necessarily buyers are liars all the time. It's just they lie to themselves, right? Meaning that, yeah, it's not worth our time, but really it is. And the reason why is because if the stats continue to rise, meaning the millennial generation, I think theirs is like, they're choosing like 87% of the first agent they meet now. Like that number was down to like 77 over the last decade. Like it was decreasing, right? Like people were shopping more and more, but now more and more are choosing the first person they meet face to face. So we go, gosh, there's a lot of reason. And like Sean just said, if we can move this to a transparent, honest, educational conversation where literally nobody else would take the time to do such a thing, that is a great trust validation to help move people forward with us, especially if we have to follow up over the next year with people or the next 8 months. A lot easier. And again, you'll start figuring out how does this presentation look based off of your time frame and theirs. I always like the shorter presentation and then saying something like, well, you know what, Sean, I've got 30 more minutes budgeted for my time, but I know we were only planning 20. Would you like me to walk you through the next steps on how it looks when you start submitting offers? And now all of a sudden they're like, yeah. And now you've got somebody engaged, right? Versus if they go, you know what, no, I think I'm okay. The nice part is you go, well, that's not how it's supposed to happen, but all right, I'll revisit this one. Any other questions for Sean, or you guys have any good feedback for people that are doing it right now? So that way all of us can kind of move in this world of Zoom. Sean, maybe the objection, like what about people that aren't very tech savvy? Have you ever had anybody who's not super tech savvy still join a Zoom link?
No, usually I go in person on those.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I've worked around that. So just try to go in person. But again, like if I can get in front of them before even, it's usually like I take them to see something if I can. and then I do the presentation. But some of the leads I get are like wanting the education, they're investors or new investors or something like that. And those are, they're always eager, because I have an investment property too, and I share that. So once I share, basically it's all connecting stories. So once I share what I've done, it puts me into the expert position, and then they want to learn from me. So those folks, I tend to get on a Zoom before I actually even meet them in person. But Zillows, I try to meet them in person. And then in between, while we're looking at properties, I'm building value and then finding out about them. And then I'm like, oh, I have this amazing buyer's presentation, and everybody that's taken it completely appreciates it. And they never felt like it's a waste of time. And I just say, it's the whole process from the day you meet me to the day we close. It's the entire process. And I tell them, it takes about 45 minutes. And they're like, okay, let's set it up. So then I also know, right off the bat, I also know, like you said, if they're going to take the time to do a 45-minute presentation to learn the process, they're ready to go.
Yeah. I think it's great feedback, though, at least for, I know not everybody on this call is using some type of bottom of funnel, but I think this would be good for open house leads. Same thing, right? Like you're saying, hey, like a Zillow lead or open house, do you have that presentation when you're meeting those people to not just be like, okay, I guess I'll talk to you another time or give you a phone call. It's actually the close around, hey, it's super nice meeting you. Sounds like you guys are out there looking at homes. I have the next step, and however you want to present that to them. So thanks for putting that together. You just helped me with that kind of like open house leads. This is then where we should be moving them to, is how many of those can you move to a Zoom link, right? Okay, I like it. Questions for Sean, guys, or feedback?
Hey, Justin. Yeah, Sean, good presentation. I agree with you. If you don't meet somebody in person, you're never going to sell them a house. That's my opinion. So I try to meet them in person and lead them along in that first meeting of how I do business and what I do, for a buyer. But the other thing, the first thing you brought up was the adjustable rate loans. And I'm starting to have that conversation with a number of my buyers now. Some who've been in the market, not gotten a house over the last 6 or 8 months, and the price is going up. And depending on where they're going to be with an adjustable loan, either 5 or 7 or 10 years from now in their life, the adjustable loan may make sense. And understanding that and doing it, because with the Fed rate going up another 0.5 point, I know I've had some predictions of rates going to 6 now, faster than I thought they were going to hit that number. And that's a huge number, $300, $400, $500 a month more in a payment than somebody that was looking 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So they either have to drop their price point because that's all they can afford, or possibly look at an adjustable rate loan. And again, depending on where they are in life, whether it's salary or one of them's working or one's working part-time and will be working full-time in 5 years. Well, that's something different. But also, so they're not looking at settling at a lower number and moving in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
From a financial standpoint, because they outgrow the house.
Yeah. And it's also, Mark, I think these are the stories, guys. So I'm going to show you the slide deck real quick, but this is actually, I believe, much more warranted than the Instagram stories, but I'll close just real quick. I'll send you guys the slide deck. But what Sean's just bringing up around, Sean, that page you had that was like, are you willing to? You know what I mean? Or your self-assessment.
Oh, the buyer self-assessment.
Yeah, Mark, that's where I'm thinking I build that page out even a little bit more that just says, hey, here's, your options too, because there are going to be a lot of people who exit the thought process of doing this where they didn't know, well, actually, if it's affordability, if we go 5-to-1, and the part that I didn't mention in the article this morning was they were saying that the average credit score of the 2.8% of people doing ARMs right now is 775. They're saying the average credit score of the people in 2007 doing ARMs was in the low 600s, right? So like, guess what? And I'm not the messenger here, right? Like if you have a bad credit score, I'm not attacking you, but just the likelihood of people with high credit scores of the good things happening, Mark, like you were saying, are a lot more likely than the optimists who, hey, you know what? I'm hoping for these things to happen, and I haven't been able to see the historical success that has led to me having such a good credit score, right? So
Right.
I do believe that that will be important in these presentations. And this is a lot for us guys to just say, okay, you're right. And the more I think we share these, it's important because Sean, you just gave me like several good things today. Like Mark, you're right. Open house leads, boom, presentation. That's the next step. Zillow leads face-to-face. People say, oh yeah, we met face-to-face and then nothing happened. I know you gotta, that's what Sean was just
Gotta
saying.
move it
At the
along.
face-to-face, you book the
Right.
Zoom. If they say no to that, you probably weren't in rapport. You got to work on your tour or whatever the things you're doing, like Sean was saying, qualifications. So good
Right.
feedback, Mark. Let me,
Yeah. Hey,
can you make me
Justin,
host
one
real quick,
more
Sean?
thing. Let me share this with you guys. One thing. So I was speaking to a mortgage guy today. So right now, loans with mortgage insurance are getting lower rates than a 20% down loan. So in some cases, your buyer could have a better rate if they're putting less than
PMI.
20% down, and they buy that PMI out to keep their number down. So all of a sudden they got a lower rate. Then they're trying to stretch to put 20% down. If they put 15% down, and to buy the MI out is actually fairly cheap when you hit that number, and their
Yeah.
rate's lower, so their payment actually ends up being lower. Again, it's just
That's-
understanding that finance side, but it's something that may help close a buyer
That's a
over
good
somebody
tip.
else who doesn't understand it.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. That's a good tip. Because then they can go and once, because the appreciation going on right now, they can probably refinance in 6 months and drop that PMI, or not even refinance. They can have their property reappraised and drop that PMI just because of appreciation. So that's actually a really good
Yeah.
combo strategy right there.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people just pay it off in the front. It's so much
Okay.
cheaper than carrying it. So you
Yeah.
have the right to do that. You can buy it out.
Justin, do you have to take the screen back? I don't know how to do that.
So go over to participants and go to me or go to you, and there'll be a little more, click on the more
Okay.
button. And I think it's like,
Make host.
yeah. And I'm just gonna share
Okay.
this with you guys. We're a minute over, so I want to respect our time. But so here's the message from Jason Pantana, okay? So what he's talking about is all the algorithms on, you know what I mean, Facebook, social media, Instagram, the more you play their game, the more they're going to help you. And so their game on Instagram right now and Facebook is stories, reels, and posts, right? Like those are the big three games to be playing. So if you're not constantly having a story run, you're going to have less success in your reels and your posts, all right? Because they're rewarding everything from an engagement and time perspective of people being drawn to anything regarding your profile. So what I want to close with today, and I'll walk through this as we kick off next week's call. This is a team I coach in Australia, and their entire team is doing some phenomenal work, and we're tracking and measuring all this. Is I want you to work on over the next week, try to never not have a story, okay? Meaning in the morning or evening, because they'll run for, X amount of hours. Always try to have a story always running. That's the challenge I'm going to leave you with, okay? Because if you always have a story running, what they're seeing is that you're participating in that aspect. So while you do the other aspects, you're going to be rewarded more. This I will send to all of you on the call, this PDF, but literally it's got a how to see everything from what I'm talking about, which is using the stickers. And so just make a picture, but use a sticker of location. Use a picture, use a sticker of a hashtag. Use a picture and now a video, and use a sticker of captions, right? So now it's like, oh, I never even knew how people had those words when they were talking. Well, it's right. It's in the sticker button. When you're uploading a story, you click on the sticker and then boom, there it is. It says captions, nice and easy. But what I'm going to really close with next week is the benefit of when you track your insights on your stories. And Posy, this is something that you're doing a great job. The engagement from things like polls But also, Sean, when you're thinking about like collecting leads or what you and I were talking about with like your monthly investor class or your weekly home buyer Zoom consult. So guys, Sean was talking about like his leads, they're like 6 months out, a year out. He's going to start doing this consult Thursdays at 6 p.m. instead of everybody one-on-one. So that way, if they're a little farther out, he's just gonna be like, hey, join me Thursdays at 6. Do you want to do this Thursday or next Thursday, Mark? And he's gonna walk them through the same consult, but now he's not having to do a consult because he's literally had like a consult every night the last week. And he was like, man, what could we do on our call? And it came out really well. Like, yeah, let's just do, if they're far out, it makes sense. Lump them together. You know what I mean? If they're ready to buy in the next 90, 120 days, that's gotta be one-on-one because we want to close them for agency, right? Commitment. But really the next part is using your Instagram stories for link connection. And the nice part is when you go to your insights, you can actually see the amount of people that click on your stories to the certain links. And remember, you can drive them to your blog. You can drive them to your website to retarget. You can drive them to your home valuation tools. You could drive them to a listing that you're trying to sell. You could drive them to your own Zillow profile. So as you're thinking about just, okay, I'm working on always having these stories going. And if it was just 10 minutes at the beginning of every one of your days, we did this live with this Australia team. They're the All Properties group if you want to follow them in this PDF. But literally what you do is every morning, you just follow this PDF. Okay, I'm going to post a picture and I'm going to use location. I'm going to use another picture and I'm going to do a hashtag. I'm going to do a video, a quick 15, 20-second video clip of anything I was doing. So think of it like if you're doing a cool video for, talking about rates, right? ARMs, Mark. Then you're just going to go take the best 15 seconds of that, do captions. And then guess what? You could say, if you want to watch the full video, click here to the reel, right? That you did. So then now I've got my captions. I've got a poll. So every day, just asking like 2 questions. Do you think the market's going to slow down? Yes or no? Like, I know people engage with that, right? Do you think those buying ARMs, do you know what an ARM is? Do you know that you can actually get a lower interest rates by buying down PMI? You know what I mean? Like, so these are just the things, asking a question every single day. And if you did these 7 things every morning, it will take you less than 10 minutes. But then you'll have these rolling for 24 hours a day. And then the next day, and so Tammy, every time then you make a post, you do a video. I might not be doing the everyday thing, but the nice part is the stories running every day is the easiest. So then that way, when you do the other ones, you're going to be rewarded more because you're at least playing on their time frame of people engaging more often. So I'll get deeper into this. I'll send you guys the PDF, but my challenge just real quick is make sure to start posting stories and try to do it in a way right now to where you always have a story running, and next week we'll dive deeper in this. Sound good? Cool.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, Sean, appreciate you leading the
Thanks.
day. Everybody have
Thanks,
an amazing
Justin.
week. Talk to you guys soon.